Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on the second day of the ninth Indonesian Finance Association International Conference. There are still IFA boards present here today with us for the second day of the conference. Professor Ted, Professor Irwan, Professor Yendruchen, Professor Sumit Agarwal, the scientific board member of IFA, and also all invitees. We are very much delighted to be here again today to continue with our conference. We still have parallel sessions until 4 p.m. Indonesian time today. We also would like to remind all of you to please fill out the attendance link of each session for today's plenary sessions in order to get the conference certificate and have the chance to be one of the lucky participants who gets a door prize. The plenary session today is also broadcasted live on YouTube Indonesia Stock Exchange. We will present the award to the best paper and also the best thesis in the closing ceremony. And we also have 3 smartphones as door prizes that will be given to the lucky participants that stayed until the end of the conference. Now we will have a photo session together. First with Professor Sumit Agrawal and also Dr. Putu Anom. Please position yourself in front of the camera, and also all the board members of IFA, commissioners, and also board of directors of self-regulatory organizations. Please position yourself in front of the camera and give your best smile. Okay, I'm gonna count. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Let me remind you that after the plenary session, we will have a break, and the parallel sessions will start at approximately 12:30 p.m. as scheduled on the guidebook provided. And all of you may proceed to the links provided in the guidebook and continue with the sessions for today. And we will see each other again at the end of the day for the award announcement, also for the best paper. To start the day this morning, we will have Professor in the Departments of Economics, Finance, and Real Estate, National University of Singapore, President, Asian Bureau of Finance and Economics Research, Professor Sumit Agrawal, to start the plenary session of the day. The plenary session will be moderated by the Dean of Faculty of Business and Economics, University of Surabaya, Dr. Putu Anom Mahadwarta, MMCSA, CCIB. Please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Tantiana. It's my you can hear my sound, my voice, right? So today we are going to have a plenary session with Professor Sumit Agarwal, and we are here to join this plenary session. It's until 11:30. So 11:30 Indonesian time, it's 12:30 Singapore time. So today's is Professor Sumit Agrawal will read his curriculum vitae from Lo Tak Kwong, Distinguished Professor in Finance, National University of Singapore Business School. He's also a head of Department Real Estate in US. Managing Director of Sustainable and Green Finance Institute, co-editor of Real Estate Economics and Association Editor at Management, Science and Journal of Financial Service Research. He has several recognition and award, and the award is including the Excellent in Labeling Award, appointed as a distinguished professors in Lo Tak Kwong professors, distinguished alumni achievement, and also have a corporate experience as a senior financial economist and senior vice president of Bank of America in 2006. So no further ado. So today we will, ladies and gentlemen, and also distinguished participants, we welcome Professor Sumit Agrawal to present the paper. It's maybe around 45 minutes less, and then we will continue with the 20 minutes of question and answering. Time is yours, Professor Sumit Agrawal.
Thank you, Professor Anom. I am very pleased for such a illustrious welcome. I'm grateful to you. So let me share my slides first and then open up to my presentation. Can everybody see my slides?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, so the program has one thing that is common with my slides, which is sustainability. Since I work mostly from a micro foundation, I will talk about sustainability from ground up. So let me kind of introduce on what I mean by that. Typically, when we think about sustainability, our focus is top down. That how do we think about sustainability from a corporate point of view, thinking about ESG ratings? When we think about regulatory point of view, we think about banking point of view. But the issue is, unless we start thinking about sustainability from bottom up also, we will never solve the sustainability problems that we face around the world. Until the households take responsibility in the transportation choices they make, in the food choices they make, in the utilities choices that they make every day, how much electricity to consume, how much water to consume, we cannot expect just the corporates and the regulators to do their job. Let me give you a few examples before I start the presentation. Most of us love to sleep in our bed with a temperature of 19 degrees in the thermostat, in the AC, and then put on a big comforter on top of it. I don't understand. Most of us like to take an elevator for one floor up, which is we can easily walk that one floor up. I live in Singapore. I see lots and lots of big SUVs being driven here. Singapore is a small country and there are no mountains here. So clearly, I don't understand why are people choosing to drive big SUVs in Singapore. Singapore also has a lot of fast, sports cars. Once again, I mean, there are no highways here where you can go for 10 kilometers at very high speed to test your car. Because we are making these choices, that's why Lamborghini is making those cars. The day we stop making those choices and we say we want electric vehicles, we want to keep our temperature at 27 degrees, we will walk up one floor, and so on and so forth, then we can make alternative choices, and that's how we can get companies to make responsible decisions, and investors can then learn from that as well. One more example. I mean, most people around the world love to eat beef. Beef consumption is very high, whereas the carbon footprint of beef relative to, say, chicken or fish or even lentils is 20 times. Let me say this again. It's not 20% higher. It's 20 times higher. Okay. The day we start saying, I don't need to eat beef. Okay. I can live with chicken or lentils. I can get the same amount of protein. That's the day we shut down that industry. And that's the day we reduce our carbon footprint around the world. Now, I'm going to not just talk about environmental sustainability. I'm going to focus a lot on social sustainability and financial sustainability in my presentation as well. So let me start out by going over what do I mean. I think of sustainability as three things: environmental, economic, and social sustainability. Okay, the same thing holds true for corporates. We think about ESG ratings. ESG ratings are nothing but their environmental, social, and corporate governance, and they try to maximize profits, which is their economic welfare of the corporation. Okay, so I have a very similar setup, what you think about corporations, but now I want us to think about households, which is ground up to solve the sustainability problem. Over the years, we have been thinking about this topic about sustainability, and now we have come to a realization that it's not just the environmental sustainability that is important, but social and economic sustainability is equally important. Okay, but we have still been only thinking about from the corporate and macro point of view. I want us to think about from the household point of view. Okay, So here is my thinking about households make both choices on environmental, social, and financial on a day-to-day basis. If we understand how do they make these choices that maximizes their current utility without hurting the utility of future generations, then we can influence the world in a much better way. Okay. Examples for obviously environmental sustainability: can we reduce our water and electricity consumption? Can we choose not to drive a car versus ride sharing or public transportation? Again, I bring up the beef, that you consume beef, which has the same proteins, but obviously it has a carbon footprint of 20 times, mainly because it's a ruminant animal, and ruminant livestock has, instead of one stomach, 4 stomachs, and it takes them a long time to digest the food, and they burp a lot. When they burp a lot, they emit methane, and methane is a 20 times more potent greenhouse gas than carbon is. Okay. When I think about financial sustainability, clearly we don't make very good financial decisions on a day-to-day basis, partly because we don't have enough financial literacy or financial decision-making, education for financial decision-making. Think of very simple decisions. When you think about mortgage refinancing or paying fees on your credit cards or debit cards, or choosing versus an adjustable rate mortgage or a fixed rate mortgage, even simple decisions on consumption and savings, most of us don't have enough adequate savings for retirement. So when we actually retire, we have to take a big drop in our consumption and in our lifestyle. In investments, we think about the two biggest puzzles in investments is under participation and under diversification in the stock market. Now, solving those problems are very significant and useful things we should be worried about as society. Social sustainability, again, gender gap for the women, women's education, minimum wage protection for the labor force, aging population and retirement safety. I can go on. Health, safety, and security, role of transportation, intergenerational and income inequality and mobility are really, really important topics that we should be thinking about from a social point of view. I want to emphasize one thing here. As academics and policymakers, we have been thinking quite a lot about environmental sustainability because we think of that as an imminent challenge for us right now as society. But we keep forgetting that social sustainability is very important for our social fabric of society. If we actually have these huge deviations across generations, across gender, across lifestyle, and across people who are retiring, we will hurt the planet equally much as we would hurt if we only focus on environmental sustainability. More importantly, I think we are living in a world where we can't just think of these things in isolation, environmental, social, or financial sustainability. Most of the lifestyle is intertwined when we think about these issues. Minimum wage changes affect household spending and debt. So minimum wage is a social sustainability issue, and spending and debt is a financial sustainability issue. So we have to think of these things together. Thinking about environmental law changes and house price demand and house prices and other factors, again, brings in environmental sustainability and financial sustainability together. Two-child policy in China and how that is impacting women's wages. Again, those are issues we should be thinking about and solving problems that don't just work in isolation to work for financial sustainability, but actually thinking about all these three things together and solving the problems that are important across these three domains. Okay. So I'm going to come back to this slide later because this is where I will emphasize how do we solve these problems. Or maybe let me just talk about it now. Okay. And then kind of give examples subsequent to that. Before we start thinking about solving these problems, we need data. And data we need so that we can measure these things. For example, right now we have a very good measure of financial sustainability or financial health of households through a very simple scorecard, like a FICO score. Everybody knows their FICO score, so they can know where do they lie in terms of a measure of financial sustainability. If they have a high FICO score, they know they can go to the bank and borrow more money and they have access to financing. Similarly, I've been thinking about building a carbon scorecard for individuals. This is very important because once we build a carbon scorecard for individuals, then we can start measuring their environmental score footprint. And once we start measuring it, then we can start telling people how they can change their footprint or their carbon footprint by changing their score. Now you may ask, how will I build it, and why should we build it, and why will people agree to build a scorecard? Okay, just how do I build it? Most of our information these days is available online through financial transactions. Most of us use credit card, debit cards, checks, or e-wallets to make transactions. So I can actually track how much times you put petrol in your car, or how many times you order a Grab, or how many times you refill your public transportation card, like a MRT card. So I can see what is your transportation footprint. Similarly, I know what your water bill is, how often you pay it, what's your how much amount you pay from your water bill or your electricity bill or any other bill, both on your debit card, credit card, or other financial transactions. Food, we know where you go grocery shopping, either through if you're using your credit card or you're using a wallet when you order food online. I can track most of it. In fact, I can track if you're ordering beef versus if you're ordering chicken from food, or when you go to grocery stores. So this allows me to kind of come up with a very nice measure of your carbon scorecard. Then I can start think of designing policies, how to change your behavior in reducing your carbon scorecard by saying, look, if you reduce your carbon scorecard, X will happen. And that brings me to the second point. Why would people give their data to me or to an academic to say, here, allow me to build your carbon scorecard, and what do I get in return? I give you 4 benefits of building this scorecard. The first will be that governments, instead of giving carbon credit to corporations, they can give a tax rebate to people who have a lower carbon scorecard. So your tax rate is lower, so you benefit and you're more likely to contribute to building a scorecard for yourself. The second benefit I see is banks are big into doing green financing. They really want to give green finance to companies who are actually having a lower footprint. Instead of them giving green financing to corporations, they should be giving green financing to individuals. If you have a lower carbon scorecard, your mortgage rate will be lower, or your credit card interest rate will be lower, your auto rate will be lower. If you've got a small business loan, that will be lower pricing for that. So you can see there are many benefits. The other thing is peer effects are big for individuals. We like to boast and tell each other, look, I am driving a Prius or I'm driving a Tesla and my carbon scorecard is lower. If we all have a scorecard, it will help us. And finally, I think that what is happening is that we all are cross-subsidizing rich people right now. Rich people are more likely to eat beef and drive Lamborghini and live in big houses and have big utility bills. The poor people don't eat very high proteins like beef. They eat very simple proteins like lentils and other things. So why should they be cross-subsidizing the rich? Instead, if we have a scorecard, then we will be remove the subsidy from the poor to the rich, and the poor will benefit. This happens not at the individual level only, but cross-country. You look at America, which is a very rich country, that's where the carbon footprint of individuals is very high versus Indonesia or India, where the carbon footprint is very low because people don't live in big houses, drive big expensive cars, or eat very expensive proteins. So you can see why a simple carbon scorecard that is built at the individual level but first I can build it, and second, it can be used to actually optimize behavior on making the planet more green, because once I know you're green, then I can change behavior. Okay, now I'm going to spend some time talking about studies that I have been doing on looking at measuring carbon footprint and how to reduce individuals' carbon footprint, environmental footprint. Then I'll talk about social footprint, and then I'll talk about financial footprint. So you can think about environmental, social, and financial sustainability issues. So I'm going to just give you examples of things that I've been doing in this front, so you can see, okay, this can be done and useful. Okay, first study that we have looked at is how can we nudge children in schools to help their parents to reduce their electricity bill at home. So this is a study in Singapore we did where we actually randomly looked at schools and we gave the children this option that if you get your parents to reduce your electricity bill by 10% for a 4-month period, then you'll be eligible to win a prize at the school lottery. Now, it's not that every kid who does that and reduces their electricity bill by 10%, they will get a prize. They will be in a lottery to get a single prize. One kid will only get a prize. So you can see the cost is very low. We are spending very little money to do this. And so we did that in a randomly chosen few schools in Singapore, and in other schools, we did not do it. So you can think of this as a very clean study where we can do causal and cause and treatment. So we can say, here is the treated school. What is the effect of this treated school on electricity outcome? Whereas we have a control school and we have an effect before treatment of the school and after treatment. So typically what you do in medical sciences, we are using the same kind of idea here to do a difference in difference kind of a study. Here is a simple graphical presentation of the result. If you look at the first 4 period, the treated and control school neighborhoods, the electricity consumption is very similar, the red and blue line. After month 5 is where we said, now you have to reduce your electricity bill by 10%. And you can see the 2 lines starting to diverge, the blue and red line. Red is the treated schools and blue is the control schools. So the kids who are living near the treated schools, they actually reduce their electricity consumption at home. And once we remove the treatment, which is at period 8, even subsequent to period 8, there is an effect in reduction of electricity in the treated schools. So what that tells you is that by giving this simple nudge to children to do this for their parents, and children are the most effective nudges. I mean, I have a very small child at home and he can pretty much make me do anything by saying, Papa, I want this, and Papa will most likely give in. So you can see by doing a very simple thing like this, we can reduce electricity bill of households by a few percent. Now, in this case, we were only effectively reducing the bill by 2%. But remember, when we are reducing by 2%, we are not even giving them an option to be in the lottery, because to be in the lottery, you have to reduce by more than 10%. So all this effect I'm documenting is for free. That we didn't even give any prize, we didn't do anything, and we got a 2% reduction in the electricity bill per household in that neighborhood. Okay. Now, if we think about water, let me skip this and talk about water. Water is a challenging issue because most of the time, water is a big issue right now. For example, Singapore consumes around 430 million gallons of water a day. Okay. And it's expected by 2060, this consumption will only double. Okay. Or in effect, we can think of various ways to reduce water supply, but I'm not going to focus on water supply. I'm going to focus on water demand. I mean, water supply, you can think about, building local catchment areas, importing water, creating new water or desalination plants. But mostly engineers do that kind of stuff, not economists. So I'm going to think about what economists can do. So just to give you a reference, Singapore consumes around 143 liters of water at this point. And by 2030, Singapore wants to reduce the water consumption to around 130 liters per person per day. And that's what I want to do. Can we solve this problem? Okay. The first thing we said is, can we do this by just pricing, increase the price of water? And if we increase the price of water, will that cause people to reduce water consumption? Okay. Now, this is what happened in Singapore in 2017 and 18. Water prices collectively in those 2 time periods went up by 30% and 40% if you use water less than 40 cubic meters versus above 40 cubic meters. So you can see there was a substantial price increase in water in those 2 time periods. Now, this is exactly to give you the reference. If you use 0 to 40 cubic meters, your price went from $2.10 to $2.74. And if you use more than 40 cubic meters, your price used to be $2.80 and it went up to $3.60 or so, something like that. Okay. So you can see there was a big increase in water for people. So what we did is we collected data for every apartment in Singapore. Let me say this again, not just a sample, but for every apartment, every building for housing and commercial, we collected the water usage for 10 years, monthly water usage for these apartments. Then we just plot the data here. I'm just plotting from 2011 to 2020, just the water
Professor
usage by
Agarwal,
apartment size.
I'm sorry. So, can you put it in the slideshow mode for the screen so the audience says it's too small to see? Thank you very
Can you
much.
see it better?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. Sorry, I forgot that. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, of course, we can see it. Thank you. You can continue.
Okay, so what you can see is this is a simple graph of basically water usage by household in that time period. Now I run very simple regressions to show what happens pre and post water usage after the price increase. What you see is that after the policy implementation of price increase, water usage went down by 5.8%. If I try to break this down, just the policy announcement versus the first price increase in 2017 and the second price increase in 2018, you can see there is a reduction in water usage of 3.7%, 2.1%, and 2.8%. So quite significant reduction in water usage by households. This is going from 2-bedroom to 3-bedroom to 4-bedroom, all throughout the distribution of our data, people's water usage actually goes down. Okay, so that's one way we can actually reduce water demand of consumers. I want to tie this again, keep tying all of these studies back to your scorecard that I've been telling you we want to build, because if we can use this, we can reduce water demand, that we can reduce their carbon scorecard, and then we can give them benefits like tax return, tax rebates, or also giving green financing. Now, what else can we do to reduce water demand? I mean, one thing that we thought about is how about we change the fixtures in the households? If we change the piping, if we change the other things, faucets, and give them better things, will they reduce water demand? So luckily in Singapore, there is a program called Home Improvement Program that actually does a simple vote of the residents within a given building. And if 80% or more of them agree, then the government will come in and change all your fixtures in your house. It costs a lot, but we want to see does that impact water usage and water demand. So it gives us a very nice setting. Imagine two buildings, one building only 75% approved, so they didn't go through, so there was no change in fixtures. And another building, 81% agreed, so there was a change in fixtures. So I want to compare these two buildings. In one building, just few people didn't agree, so the fixtures are not changed. Another building, people agreed, and then creates this kind of a DID setting or a control and treatment group and seeing what happens. So if we look at the simple graph, again, we are using all the data that we have, you can see that the water demand actually, or water usage, goes down by around 3.5% on average, and the effect is persistent for 10 years. The graph is showing this effect will last for 10 years after the change in fixtures in your apartment, that your water reduction is as low as by 2% even 10 years later. So big effects by actually making some small changes in everybody's apartments, you can reduce water usage. Here are simple regressions that control for everything else and show this interactive effect of the policy and after the policy implementation for buildings that were essentially treated for this policy. Okay, so 3.5%. Now, if I collectively look at these point estimates from the price increase and the HIP policy, as I said earlier, we want to reduce water consumption from 143 liters to 130 liters. I'm already 2/3 of the way there by simple two policies of reducing water demand on the households. Okay, there are lots of things we can do. I mean, here are things I've been very interested in looking at what will happen in terms of electricity consumption in Singapore if because of haze activities and because of the, right now Singapore actually has significant haze these days. Now, what happens during haze in terms of usage of electricity and even water? So these are some studies that look at that and how haze is being affecting Singapore. Let me just talk about this study because this is also related to Indonesia. Jakarta faces a severe problem of becoming actually an underwater city or essentially submerging. And every day Jakarta is going down for two main reasons. One, the sea level is rising because of greenhouse gas effects. Polar ice is melting. But secondly, Indonesia is sinking because this water tables in Jakarta is dropping, and so the population of Jakarta is so big that it cannot handle the population, and so the ground levels are sinking in Jakarta. So the question is, if sea levels are going to rise, what is the effect of that on house prices? Okay. Now, I don't have the data for Jakarta, so I can't do this, but I have data for Singapore, so I wanted to see what will that do. So here is a policy announcement that the Prime Minister in Singapore made, which said that we are going to spend close to $100 billion over 100 years to combat the sea level rise problem. Now, Jakarta has done the same thing because Jakarta is going to build a seawall in the ocean to protect Jakarta from sea level rise. So the question is, if they're going to build a seawall out there in the ocean, will this affect house prices? Now, clearly just the announcement of this policy will have an effect. So what we did is we again tried to do a DID, difference in difference or a treated versus control group. The Prime Minister, when he made the announcement, he actually laid out certain maps in his speech. We used those exact maps to point out where he said the sea level rise threat will be, where they plan to build the wall, and then we can know which buildings in this area will be affected by sea level rise. So here is the first result. What we look at in the data is, if you look at house prices of HDBs, right after the announcement, the trading activity of the HDBs, then the prices drop by around 6% of HDB prices. So transaction prices. This is expected. I'm not surprised by this result. This is also not the focus of my paper, but you can see that the policy announcement caused house prices to drop by 6% because people who lived in that area, in that coastal area, realized that my apartment potentially is in threat. What is interesting is the announcement also said that we're going to spend $100 billion over 100 years to build a seawall. Then the question is, does that actually mitigate the price level drop because the government is going to take initiative to protect these properties? This is what happens if you look at the properties which are directly in front of the proposed seawall by the Prime Minister. And what you see is the drop in house prices is only 2%. Now just compare this to the 6% drop to the 2% drop here. So the drop actually went down significantly from 6% to 2%. So the point is that if you actually take mitigation strategies and announce them credibly, then the population will realize and people will say, okay, I don't expect that significant effect, and that will actually help asset values. Now, we talk a lot about asset values. In this conference, there'll be a lot of discussion on the price of the various assets or corporations, how that will be affected due to sustainability. Here, I'm showing you an example of another asset class, which is housing, and how that is affected by sea level rise and mitigation strategies by the government. Okay. So I worked a lot on these things on environmental sustainability and issues of weather, temperature, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to spend time. These are some charts I've looked at in terms of food consumption. Clearly, this is a really important issue. If you talk to people around the world, they don't think eating is a very important issue in terms of their carbon footprint. But if you actually look at the data, it's a significantly important issue. if you ask people, how do they understand the climate impact of their individual actions? Clearly, eating is not very high, but actually the impact of eating vegan food has a very important effect on your carbon footprint. They actually think only SUVs or public transportation has a big impact on their carbon footprint. But eating vegan diet, people don't view that as having a big effect on their carbon footprint. So you can see the difference between reality, which is food has a big effect on your carbon footprint, whereas people's perception, what really matters to them is mostly transportation and actually switching to hybrid cars, whereas food is very low on the list. Okay. There are lots of studies I've done. I'm not going to spend time on those. Let me spend time talking a little bit about social sustainability and then come back to financial sustainability. Okay. Now, in social sustainability, I think one of the biggest issues is about women's education and women's earnings. We already know that there is a big gap between men and women wages. People have been debating for a long time, why are men's wages higher than women's wages? Then it comes back to education. People will say women may not be more educated, men are more educated. So let me talk about education, what is affecting women's education. So I'm going to skip some more of these slides and come here. So if you ask me, the two most important factors in women's dropout rate or girls' dropout rate in school is sanitary pads and toilets. Girls need privacy when they're in school for going to toilet and also for sanitary pads. Girls have they start having their period around grade 7, and when they start their period, they need to have sanitary pads. If they don't, boys in the schools will tease them. Girls end up skipping class for 4 to 5 days a month. If they skip this class for a good 6, 7, 9 months, their grades fall. The parents think the girl is not so smart. The boy is smarter than her because he's studying better. It's not that, she just end up skipping school for 5 days. So they think, oh, let's keep the girl home. Why are we wasting our money on the girl? And that kind of starts a cascading effect on girls not going to school more, and that having their education and income effects in the long run. So I want to study this. Does providing sanitary pads affects girls' education? Now you may say, okay, Sumit, this sounds fine, but this sounds like a very issue for Africa or rural India, and it's not really important for most of us. But if you actually look at the data, California just last year announced that they will be providing free sanitary products for all girls in California schools. UK just announced that they will be providing free period products to all girls in schools and colleges throughout England. So you can clearly see developed countries are also thinking about this issue very seriously, that they need to provide free sanitary products for all girls. Now, what I wanted to do is study this in a very clean fashion. So what we did is we worked in India, in Kerala, in a state where the government actually provided sanitary products vending machines to a selected schools. Around 700 schools randomly were given free sanitary pad vending machines. And these machines, there was a teacher who used to record which girl is coming to ask for sanitary products. Their name was recorded, which days, and everything was put down on pencil and paper. We actually have collected all of that data from these schools. Here is the distribution of the schools that got this sanitary pad vending machines. In 2015, 50 schools got it. In 2016, another 100 schools got it. By 2017, around 220 schools got it, and so on and so forth. So you can see the distribution of schools who were getting this sanitary pad vending machine varies by year. Here is a simple graph or a map of the state of Kerala that shows you the distribution of vending machines by state, by school, by district over the years. So you can see it's very randomly distributed. There is no way that the government said, oh, we will only give these vending machines to certain schools who are doing better or who are doing worse in life. So it sets up a very nice, clean experimental setting for us to study. Then what we did is we collected all the data from the education system in India of all the of all the kids who go to these schools. We know how well they did in school. Did they drop out of school? What their grades were? Did they pass? How well they did in the examinations, and so on and so forth. We also know which schools have these vending machines, so we can actually tie these things together. Finally, we looked at around 17,000 schools in this state of Kerala and started studying how the girls were doing. Here is the bottom line result for you guys, that if I look at what happens to girls' dropout rate in these schools, in grade 7, that's when girls start period around the world, the dropout rate goes down by 24%. Let me say this, 24%, that is huge. In grade 5, there is no effect. In grade 6, there's no effect. Grade 8, there is 8% effect. Grade 9, there's also an effect. But grade 7, the first time they get their period, there's a big reduction in the dropout rate. Less likely to drop out because they have access to sanitary products in the school. Okay. If I look at this result in a dynamic fashion, there is no effect in grade 5 and grade 6. Grade 7, the dropout rate starts to go down, not just in the first year, but every year subsequent to having this vending machine in the school. Okay. If I look at some other outcomes, like are they more likely to appear for an exam? Girls are more likely to appear for exam after the introduction of the vending machine in their school. What about passing the exam? They're more likely to pass the exam. What about passing the exam with distinction? So you can see girls are more likely to actually do everything because there is a vending machine, sanitary pad vending machine installed in their school. I said there are two main factors. One is toilets and one is sanitary pads. If we can provide that, we can actually reduce the gender education gap. That is a very key factor in understanding our social sustainability factors that affect women outcome in later years in their lifetime. If I look at the 4th grade exams, obviously there's no effect, which I should not find for 4th grade girls, because there is no effect of the sanitary pad vending machines for the 4th grade girls. Okay. What about other things we can think about in the social sustainability dimension? Obviously, there's a lot that you can do. I was interested in, do people pay attention to the food that they eat? Do people pay attention to the ESG ratings of companies and the food they order in the grocery stores, consumers? If the ESG rating of a company drops, are people less likely to order food from those companies? And if they find out more negative information about a company, like they were actually misbehaving certain corporations, do consumers change their habit of ordering food? So here we looked at in China, we actually studied consumer credit card data and how do they order food from various vendors and various corporations after hearing negative news about that corporation. So here is the kind of negative news I'm thinking about. If there is quality-related deterioration in that company, or illegal operations, or advertisement-related, or safety issues, or tax-related issues, and does that negatively affect people's behavior, and do they actually punish these companies by reducing their consumption of food items? So it is a very simple graphical presentation. If the people hear that there's a negative event in that company, that could be ESG rating drop, that could be any other policy punishment that the company is getting, consumers will reduce their consumption from 250 RMB per month to around 150 RMB per month after the event. If you look at companies that were not punished, their consumption stays the same before and after the event for companies that were punished in the same space. If you're thinking about providing butter or jam for the same same butter, you don't punish companies that were not announced that they did something wrong or their ESG rating went down. Okay. I'll skip some of this stuff so I can be more, provide you some more interesting results that I'm doing. Okay, let me talk about financial sustainability. I have close to 13, 14 minutes to talk about this issue. Now, in finance, people talk about, what will happen at retirement. Do you have enough portfolio diversification, under participation, choosing the optimal mortgage, and so on and so forth. There are lots of issues that consumers deal with on a daily basis. Are we making the optimal financial decisions, or are we financially sustainable as households? Okay, here is a simple example. If you think about a company in America advertising credit cards, they say they have 3,000 different kinds of credit cards. Now, it's mind-boggling if I ask you, there are 3,000 different kinds of credit cards, how to choose between them. So that's the kind of task that we face on a regular basis, and we can't get these decisions right. And most of the reason is that we are lacking financial planning, financial literacy, or even financial education, and we need to provide that. So I'm going to go over a few examples of studies that I've been doing in financial decision making and financial sustainability. So let me start out with this simple choice that we gave consumers in the US. We did this study with 150,000 consumers. So you can see what we said to these consumers. You have two options. You can choose credit card 1, where you have 12% interest rate and $20 annual fee, or credit card 2 with 15% interest rate and no annual fee. We also told the consumers you can switch these credit cards anytime you want. You may make a mistake, so you can switch it to another card. Now, it's very clear how you should choose. If you are expecting to borrow in the future, you should choose card A. If you're not expecting to borrow, you should choose card B. Now, you might say, how do I know if I'm expecting to borrow? My needs may change. Hence, I said you can switch the card at any time. If you choose card A, card 1, and then you didn't expect to borrow, you should be able to switch to card 2. The question then is, do people optimally choose these credit cards, and do they make mistakes? This is about sustainability. Are they financially sustainable in the long run for their lifetime or even their children's lifetime? If you look at the data, 43% of the people make a mistake in choosing the very simple choice between card 1 and card 2. We make these mistakes every day in our life. Believe me, we make all the mistakes on consumption, savings, investing on a daily basis that we go out and do things. So you can see 40% make a mistake. How many switch? Only 3.8% switch. So you might say, 40% made a mistake. They didn't know upfront, but they should all switch. But very few actually end up switching their cards. So people are making tons and tons of mistakes on a daily basis. Then the next question is, fine, they made a mistake. Can they learn with time to make less mistakes? So this is a separate paper where we were looking, do consumers make less mistakes over time? So here I'm studying 3 outcomes: paying fees, late fees, over limit fees, cash advance fees on your credit card. And do you make less mistakes on these things with time as you build more relationship with your bank? So what you see in the first year, you are paying around $157 per year in fees to the bank. But after 5 years, that fee declines by 66% or to $53. That's good news. We are making mistakes, but we are making less mistakes with time as we learn more about the financial institution that we are dealing with. How about who makes these mistakes? So this is a separate paper we had written where we look at who makes mistakes, and you find that the young and old people are more likely to make mistakes than the middle-aged people. So the idea that I have is the young actually have very high IQ. So IQ starts declining with age. At age 20, you have the highest IQ. And by age 90, you're almost 2 standard deviation below the average IQ. And at age 20, you are 1 standard deviation higher. So, we all have declining IQ with time. But what happens is with time, we actually build experiential capital. So our analytical capital is declining with time. Our experiential capital is increasing with time. So they will intersect at a point, and that's what I call as the middle age, where you're making the optimal financial decision. So going back here, when we say they make the least mistakes at middle age, that's what I'm saying. At middle age, you have both good experiential capital and still have analytical capital, and the optimal of the two allows you to make the least mistakes you can. Okay. So you can clearly see this results document, and we this in this study we looked at 10 different kinds of mistakes. Here are the 10 mistakes we look at, and we find that optimally you make the best decisions at around age 53. I feel very good about this because I'm currently 53, so I feel like I'm making the least amount of financial mistakes in my life. Now, let me just explain, because I've been saying that these mistakes come because of your analytical capital. So basically, it's because of your IQ. Let me start kind of explaining this, how these mistakes come about and how do I correlate that with IQ, okay? So imagine that you have two credit cards, okay? One credit card, you have credit card A, and you have another credit card B. You have $10,000 of debt on credit card A. Credit card B comes around and says, wow, why don't you transfer your debt from credit card A to credit card B? And if you do that, I'm going to give you interest-free debt for 1 year. You don't have to pay any interest on this debt for 1 year. So it's optimal strategy for you to move your credit card debt from credit card A to credit card B and avoid paying 24% interest on credit card A, because credit card B doesn't require you to pay any interest. But what happens is these card companies will say that if you subsequently make any purchase on your card, which is credit card B, we will apply the payment to balances with lowest APR. So let me explain this. Imagine now you went and started making purchases. You spent $1,000 on credit card B and you paid off $1,000 the same month. So what will happen? They will take the payment you make and will apply it to the lowest APR balance. Your lowest APR balance at credit card B is not the $1,000 you spend. It's the $10,000 that you transfer to credit card B, because that's at 0%. So they will take your $1,000 payment, apply to the $10,000 and reduce it to $9,000. And they will take your spending of $1,000 and start charging interest on it at 24%. I call this the eureka moment, that when do I get this eureka moment and find out, wow, I should not be using credit card B. I should be using credit card A to make all my purchases and pay them off in the same month. I hope you guys got it. I mean, slightly complicated, but since all of you guys are finance, econ, smart people, this should not be hard to understand. But even for us, people who should know this, it's not something that is trivial to understand how this works. So what I wanted to see is, do people make these mistakes and do they figure it out and switch to credit card A to use that? I call this as the eureka moment. So what I did is then I looked at these people who make these mistakes. Then I look at the data for these people and I merge it with their AFQT score or their IQ score. So I went and collected data from the military, and military does an IQ test for every person who enters the military at age 18. I match this data with the people's financial mistakes, and I see, are people who have lower IQ 20 years later, are they less likely or more likely to make financial mistakes? So here is the result. People who, so x-axis is just plotting the AFQT score or your IQ score, and y-axis is pointing out who are more likely to get this eureka moment that I should not be using credit card B to make purchases after I've transferred $10,000 to credit card B because of reducing my interest on the balance transfer. If you look at the highest IQ people but from 70 to 80 to 80 to 100, they get the eureka moment right away and they never make any mistake, okay? But people who are in the lower IQ, between 0 to 30 or 30 to 50, they are more likely to never get this eureka moment and continue to use credit card B to make purchases and then essentially pay higher interest on these new purchases. Whereas they have the option to use credit card A to make spending and payments. I hope it's clear. It's slightly, this example is slightly dense. I'm happy to revisit this in the Q&A. Okay. So these are the kind of studies I have been doing. I mean, these slides are very, very long. I am happy to give these slides to you guys to kind of look them over at your own free time. When this is what I do for a living, I can spend more time. But let me stop here because I've talked a lot and give you guys the time to ask questions of me on these studies or broadly the agenda I have on thinking about household sustainability instead of not only solving the problem top down, but trying to solve the problem bottom up, where we want to make households sustainable financially, socially, and environmentally, either building scorecards or actually doing studies where we can reduce their sustainability or increase their sustainability by reducing their mistakes or reducing their footprint in terms of social or environmental. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Agarwal. So we are open for discussion. Yep, it's a nice, good presentation and also a very interesting part about sustainability in the household. We also have some kind of, our president already signed about our carbon tax, Professor Agarwal, the carbon tax. Then we can discuss about that later on. Maybe I open the discussion first with the audience and all the attendees, please. You can raise your hands using the tool from the Zoom meetings. So, Professor Agarwal, in my opinion, maybe I'm, first of all, thank you very much for very nice insight of you for this part. But I'm focused on the one thing that bothered me a lot is about energy efficiency. As you know, we in Indonesia, we still push forward to using EV, electric vehicles, rather than using the hybrid one. And we also have problems with energy efficiency with very high energy consumption contribute to carbon emission and climate changes. And this improving energy efficiency that you are talking about is insulation, energy efficiency in appliances, and renewable energy, and so many types of efficiency that we can do like us in Indonesia here. My main question is about what do you think about converting this from engine combustion and suddenly move toward to electric vehicles rather than just move step by step to the hybrid one and then you move to the electric vehicles. What do you think about that, Professor?
I think, look, eventually the world will move over to electric vehicles. There is no doubt. There is no other choice. Okay. The oil, the production and resources that we have will only last us another 70 to 80 years. So we have to, if we want to survive as a planet. Okay. We are making enough effort towards that. The problem right now we face is range anxiety because the batteries in these electric vehicles are not very reliable because we don't have enough charging stations around the countries. I think the first countries that should start doing this are smaller countries because you don't have to have range anxiety if you are in Singapore or in Switzerland because you don't have to go very long distances. So let's start solving this problem in an urban setting where you don't drive a lot. And then once people start getting more comfortable with the idea that they don't have to worry about range anxiety and we start building more and more charging stations, then I think the adoption rates for electric vehicles will actually go up dramatically, not just in a linear fashion, but in a very convex fashion, that people will start saying, I want to use electric vehicles.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor Agarwal.
I saw a hand up by CT, I think.
Yes. So we have one attendees from Mrs. Siti Satiti. please, you can ask your question or discussion. Mrs. Siti Satiti, can you hear me? I'm sorry. So the next attendees that raise hand is Pak Beni Darmawan. Yes.
Hi, Prof. Very insightful. I learned a lot today, especially you go to the nucleus of how to change sustainability from household. Very interesting. But coming back to your comments about EV, I'm just wondering because I noticed that the EVs, the car weight itself is heavy. And if I don't know Jakarta infrastructure or Indonesian infrastructure, how did that measure for that extra weight on that bridges and everything and car parks and everything? I don't know the information, but first, surely the more EV is the more load to the roads, bridges, and infrastructures and the maintenance of things. And also, when everyone plugs their EV at night, what about the power load and everything? I mean, that's just my comment, and that's how I see this, how this EV, will be confused on how this is going to roll out. Thank you.
So I'm not sure about the premise of your question, because your premise is that EVs seems to be putting more load on the road, and that will be a problem.
Yeah.
I think EVs actually are much lighter than conventional vehicles, mainly because we don't need a lot of the equipments and a lot of things that traditional vehicles need, that a combustion engine needs. We have removed all of it. So actually, if you open up the trunk and open up the front side of a Tesla, it's empty. You can actually put luggage in there. So these cars are much lighter and they're better. I think the question is about batteries. Look, when I go to a petrol pump, I can fill my gas in 4 or 5 minutes maximum. Okay. The problem is if I go to charge my battery, it will take 30 to 40 minutes. And then I have to multitask. I have to put the charge it while I'm eating or while I'm doing this. And people are not very good at that. So I think what we really need in the long run is where I can swap batteries. I can bring in something, I can quickly swap a battery at a station, and then I can go right away. So within 5 minutes, you can swap my battery. That allows me to kind of refill my tank essentially and allow me to kind of move on. I think that's the kind of stuff we need to do in this space. And once we do that thing, I think we will be much better in adoption of EVs.
Yes, Professor Agarwal, one of the questions from Pa Beni is, Mr. Beni, is about how about the load of this energy? So we have to discuss about if everyone have an EV and then they have to charge it at night, so the load of the electricity will increase. So that will become the problems. Is that one of the concerning part for you?
I mean, truly is, because look, it depends on how we are generating electricity. If we are still generating electricity with coal or with oil, then we have not solved the problem. Instead of putting that in the generator of electricity or in the car, we have the same problem. But if we move on to generating electricity from hydrogen, and especially clean hydrogen, then I think we have then moved the needle. And that has been happening quite a lot in Saudi Arabia, in Australia, in South America, where we have been pushing very hard. Like if you look at solar and wind, the adoption of solar and wind around the world, especially in India and other developing countries like Philippines, Indonesia, is enormous. I have a lot of micro data to see where the wind and solar plants are in Indonesia, India, Philippines. And there are so many, and these countries are so good, natural to adopt solar and wind energy facilities.
Okay, thank you very much. So we move to the question from Mrs. Ismi Fatia from the chat room. She asks about what was the most challenging part of Professor's research process and how to solve it. So maybe this is from the students of the doctoral programs.
Okay.
Please.
I mean,
Professor
that's a
Agawa.
very good question. That look, we are doing research. Let me just take this example of providing sanitary pads to girls in school. I think that's a very important question. I mean, we cannot underestimate how important it is to provide this and make sure girls continue to go to school. That requires a lot of funding. That requires a lot of coordination with the government who will provide all these vending machines. And for academics like me to say, how do I get access to data? And then once I do this study, how can then I tell, governments around the world that, look, this is very important to save girls' education outcomes. So there's a whole chain of events, convincing governments to do this experiment, collecting the data, then using this data to then go back to other governments to say, look, we did this study. It has huge impact. I think you should adopt giving free sanitary pads to your population and girls. Every step is not easy. It's difficult, but it's something we academics have to do to kind of convince. And I do this every day, try to make presentations and talk to policymakers that can we push the idea so that we can get more adoption on sustaining the planet. Either it could be environment, like water studies I was talking about, collecting micro data of every household for 10 years. It took me a year and a half to convince the government to give us that data.
So it took you years and a half to do that. Okay, Mrs. Ismi, but yeah, the challenging part is you have a long period of time to research. You have to do a stakeholders networking process, meet your government and so on. And that's what Professor Agawa did.
Yes.
So thank you. The next question is from Faume Mahmoud. It's on the question and answer. Mr. Mahmoud asks about what financing options are available for homeowners who want to implement eco-friendly technologies, such as solar panels or energy efficiency appliances. So maybe this is for the case of the Singapore. Please.
No, but I think this is applicable around the world. We have been looking at some data in China, because China has been pushing quite hard to put solar panels on the top of your houses, on the roof of your houses. And China is saying, look, we will give you subsidized financing if you choose to put solar panels on your house and use that to supply part of your electricity need within your house. You may actually use this to charge your car, your electric vehicles with these solar panels, and we will give you financing. And so I think a lot of that is happening in the world where banks are realizing, instead of giving green financing just to corporations, and which are actually notorious for actually doing greenwashing, households are not doing any greenwashing in essence. So why aren't we doing green financing to households and making money from it, because households are more willing to then pay back these loans? And you see this in China, where we looked at the data that Chinese households, the default rate is very low on solar panel loans that households are taking from the government.
Yes, maybe from our point of view in Indonesia, we believe that if we are using what you suggest, Professor Agawal, about the carbon index for individuals' carbon that you already mentioned earlier. So maybe that will become one part of to reduce what we call, or to incent to person, or tax for the household. So if the household have a renewable energy, solar panels or something, maybe they can have the incentive for that.
Yes, I agree.
Yes. Another question from Mrs. Emilia Tan. Yeah. So in the question and answer, she asks about we can see sustainability from bottom up, reflection from our daily life. Professor Agawa, then what do you think about investment behavior from young generation related to the advancement of fintechs recently? So So about the fintech's growth, and maybe this is kind of like a different question, but that's okay. The investment behaviors of the young generation regarding the fintechs.
So
Please.
we have been looking at some of this data right now. I mean, look, the young generation is very much more prone to understanding the role of sustainability. I look at the food choices that the young people make, they're much more sensible and they're more likely to be vegetarian or vegan and supporting the planet than the older generation. So you can see that they make better choices in their living. They're less likely to be driving expensive cars. They want to take public transportation and so on and so forth. And they're also being very conscientious in their investments decisions. So actually investing in technology is a very good thing because technology is not orthogonal to sustainability, but actually it's complementary to sustainability. So if you actually invest in technology, you are going to push the role of technology in making the planet more sustainable. Look, the whole point of building better batteries, that will come from technology. We need technological advancements to actually increase the life of a battery. My worry is, why do I have to charge my phone every day? I should be charging my phone every month, once a month, and that's it. I should be charging my car battery every 15 days or a month because the battery life has to increase, and that will only come when we invest in technology.
So do you think the fintechs will support this investment in technology? Yeah, I remember
Yes.
I'll go to Taiwan. They have what we call as electronic scooters.
Yes. Hello. I think you froze.
Yeah, I think he lost his internet connection.
Yes, having the ideas, good ideas, pleasant ideas about how they can help to reduce this carbon emission. So another question from Unud Haposan, right? What do you think about the sustainability of infrastructure development in terms of cost and environment by focusing on green sustainability? So it's about cost and environment.
So this is an important question. I mean, think about, let me try to answer this question with an example. So most countries, because the build industry, the build environment is a big environment where they're pushing a lot because they are being accused of not being sustainable. Now, if you look at this idea around the world about green mark buildings, so a lot of buildings, what they do, they retrofit a lot of the building or a office structure, and they make it more green and they make it more sustainable. And then they say, look, this is sustainable, and that should help us getting more cheaper financing for the building or for the office space and so on and so forth. And the question is this actually good, or does this create perverse incentives for people who live in those buildings or who live in those offices? Imagine I now know my office space is green. Does that kind of change my incentive to waste more water or electricity? Because now I know, the building itself is saving electricity. Now I can actually keep my temperature at 19 instead of 24. And you actually see this is what is happening. In terms of banks giving more financing or cheaper financing, I think it's true. There is more cheaper financing for these kind of institutions who are actually making effort to reduce their carbon footprint.
Thank you, sir. So now this is about the banks. So we have also the question from Mr. Suhaidi. He's from rural banks in Nusuma, Jawa Barat. Jawa Barat is West Java. The question is about the financial expenses of the youngsters. So he said that the footprints of their loans, and they have a lot of loans, so maybe it's a over debt. So what about the situation? So what about what do you think about the financial expenses of the youngsters? Usually because they have a lot of loans, to spend to their expenses. Please.
So I think he's more worried about the financial sustainability of the young people and worried that if they actually are not spending properly, they may become over indebted over time, and that will hurt them financially in the long run, and that could have consequences. I completely agree. I think good thing is we have a financial scorecard for most people so we can monitor how financially responsible or irresponsible the younger generation is. I think we have to be very vigilant, especially for young populations, that they should become financially literate and financially educated much faster. I mean, I've been saying this for a long time, that in our high schools and in our college, we should have mandatory education on sex and finance. Because if we don't educate you about these two key aspects of your life, you're going to make mistakes on both areas, and that can cost you a lot in your lifetime. And we don't teach enough about financial education and financial literacy in high school and during college. I would actually advocate that we should have more financial literacy classes even after you start working in your company, and the company should routinely organize every 3 months a financial literacy workshop where they teach every household about literacy. Recently, I wrote a book on this topic on financial literacy and financial management, basically so we can teach households how to become more responsible, especially young people.
Yes, changing lifestyle is quite difficult, right, Professor?
Yes.
You change your lifestyle, there you have there's an iPhone 15, so you have to buy it.
Yes.
So we see youngsters lined up in front of these phones and so on, and they want to buy it more. So the next question is from anonymous attendee. She or he said, is there any relationship between prosperity to green thought? So people more aware about green living because they more prosper? Please, Professor.
I don't think there are really studies that look at that. Let me take very simple examples. Okay, if you actually walk up the stairs two level, you are actually helping yourself through your health. Okay, so and if you're using less air conditioning while you sleep, obviously that is better for your skin and that's better for your health. If you are actually eating less meat, that's also very good for your health, both from obesity point of view and diseases point of view. We know most of the non-vegetarian diet is much highly carcinogenic. So eating more vegetarian will be good for your health and be good for your well-being in the long run. So there are lots of benefits you can see through transportation, utilities, food choices that we make. Financially, you are better off. So in every aspect, I can argue that I don't need to do a study to prove this is the outcome. We already know from a lot of research and medical science that this will be the outcome.
You don't have to get rich and then you become green thought, right, Professor?
Yes.
So you have to walk one floor, second floors, just walk by stairs, and then that's a green thought. That's a good example, Professor. So another question from anonymous attendee. So your research about vending machine for women pads. So if we, let's say the audience want to do it in Indonesia, should we do it like in a rural area or in a city, or they have any different behaviors because their cultures, differences in cultures or something?
So we actually did this for the whole state. So there were lots of urban and rural areas included in the study. We found the results to be very compelling, both in urban and rural settings. Now, Indonesia, there may be cultural issues, maybe religious issues to think about. I don't know. I'm happy to collaborate or guide when you're thinking of doing such studies and provide assistance. But I think, these issues are much more about finance because people have not much money for parents to provide sanitary pads for the girls. So better to do it in rural areas where the effect we will see much higher response in terms of dropout rates.
Okay, so we can still have a lot to discuss about that matters for Indonesian part, but basically we can do it in Indonesia, right? The same as you do it in Singapore or everywhere else, but the differences is maybe there's a culture differences, but that's the challenging part of this research. Any other question from we have from Mr. Ahmad Fausan. Mr. Ahmad Fausan asks you about, based on your experience, sir, what are obstacles to encourage household awareness of sustainability, especially in developing countries?
I mean,
Please.
look, it's a big issue. Households always think that they're atomistic, that they're too small to make a big difference. They think, look, this issue is to be dealt with by petroleum companies and coal companies and big corporations, and it's not my problem. I'm so small. I just buy the iPhone. How can I change the world? But the fact is that they can, by the choices they make every day. If you decide to drive an SUV in Singapore, where there are no mountains to climb with your SUV, you're making a choice by saying, look, I'm willing to pay this high price, whereas I have no need for this product. Okay. So every day we consumers are making choices, and I work very hard in trying to convince them through these kind of studies, either policymakers or directly consumers. I teach a class in household sustainability in NUS, and I have like around 8 students from Indonesia and many students from all over the world. And the first day when they bring water bottles to my class, I tell them this is single-use plastic. Why are you bringing a water bottle to this class? You should buy a water bottle that you can use for many times. And that's how you will change the world, by actually changing your own footprint. Why are you carrying plastic bags? And why are you doing all these activities that I mentioned earlier? And it takes time. It's not easy. Even if I can change people's mind in a generation, I would call that a success.
Thank you, sir. So maybe at the end of this month, I will go to Singapore. I will bring my folding bike, sir. So we can bike in Singapore. No SUV because they don't have any much mountain or something. That's a good examples. From Philippus, Mr. Philippus, Indonesia, we have some serious issues in war against gambling apps. So yeah, we have gambling apps, online gambling. Impact the micro and macro economics. So what do you suggest with that?
I mean, I think this question is related to the financial sustainability of households, and why are households actually gambling and hurting their sustainable future of finance. I mean, clearly this is a problem. I mean, I think this is a problem at the policy level. Policymakers should shut down these kind of websites and these kind of places. If policymakers are very good at shutting down pornographic websites, why are they not shutting down websites that relate to gambling? Clearly, the policymakers are not taking this seriously enough. Okay, you go to most countries, you cannot go and use a pornographic website. So clearly, they know how to shut these down. The other problem is at education level at the household. Why are we not doing the right education on financial planning, financial literacy, and savings, as opposed to the other problem rise at within family decision making. If the husband has too much power in wasting the money on gambling, and then there is a problem in decision making. So I think a lot of these things have to be done both at the policy level, at the household level, and at the individual level.
That's more complicated. The problems of gambling in Indonesia is more complicated, sir. So a lot of influence and a lot of even the cultures, religious, and so on. Any other question from the audience, please? We still, if you have any question, you can You can ask, you can also use a Q&A, or you can just raise your hands, please. We have one from the anonymous. Green thought. Green thought, like if a person wants to buy something, they only consider low price product than low carbon product. So low price and low carbon. What do you think about that?
I mean,
Is
look,
a-
I think that this is the issue because the tension is between environmental sustainability and financial sustainability. I rather be sustainable financially by paying lower price, even if it's not green. And the question is, can we be green and financially sustainable? So can we get low price and low carbon? Now, I think that's the holy grail, or that's the final objective we want. We want green cars to be made, electric cars, which are cheaper than fossil fuel cars, so that consumers can say, I save money and I save the environment. It takes time. But I think initially, even if we do not think about the pocketbook and we think of the environment, that could be a big enough deal that we are helping the planet. But at times, I will not say always push for environmental sustainability at the cost of financial sustainability. Do think about the financial sustainability. At times, that may be more important for your life than purely environmental sustainability.
Sir, I have very this issue is very bothering me. So if we use electric vehicles, okay, use electric vehicles, and these electric vehicles have batteries on it, they have a lifespan. So if, like Indonesia, they want to push these electric vehicles for Indonesian market today, several companies already entered the market from Chinese and from Korea. But these batteries have a lifespan, and then they have to recycle in 5 years or in 10 years or so on. So that's become more issues about environmental issues, sir. So we also have a problem of this recycling, these batteries of the cars. So what do you think about that?
I mean, agreed. Look, if you think about recycling the battery versus recycling the entire fossil fuel car, the problem exists there as well. So I don't think we can just say, oh, because we have to recycle battery and I will not buy electric cars. By moving to electric cars, you're already doing a lot better for the planet and for your pocketbook as well than if you were continuing to use fossil fuels. Look, eventually the price of petrol will go up dramatically because the supply of petrol will be decreasing. So you will be forced to use electric cars purely on your financial sustainability point, forgetting even saving the planet.
Oh, okay. So it's more on the financial sustainability because the price of the gasoline will become higher, and then people cannot afford to buy gasoline more, and then they have to choose the electric vehicles. So, and eventually in the future, they will become a more efficient technology to recycle this battery, right, sir? So you can be recycling it and so on.
True.
Okay, any other question from the audience, please? So, yes, Professor Irwan, please, sir.
Okay, we'll take the last question. Then I have to really go, but I'm happy to answer this last question.
Okay, is there any rule of thumb for us to retire? Like how much money that we have to have? And yeah, probably that's it. Thank you.
So I've heard this idea. I mean, this is for America, that if you have $10 million, you're very comfortable. But that sounds very high. Okay. So I think, look, you can retire as long as you have built enough social sustainability in your life, which means your children are part of your retirement plan, and they will take care of you in retirement through providing you, intergenerational transfers. And you've saved enough in your housing. If you paid off the house and you have a significant pension that you're earning, you don't need a lot more money than that. So I don't think the golden rule would be that you should have close to $1 million saved up somewhere for emergency, which is shocks like health shocks that you will experience or could experience later in your life.
Thank you, Professor Irwan, for the question. Thank you, Professor Agarwal, for give us any insight about this sustainability, household sustainability, and hopefully this discussion will become more have an insight for usually for our doctoral program students here to really seek to do something about the idea about the sustainability.
Yeah, I'm happy to even come and talk about these issues at the university. So if you have things, I will be happy.
That's good. That's good. So you can come to Indonesia and then we can discuss it more. Use a research forum as part of the Indonesian Finance Association programs. Then we can discuss it more. Thank you very much, Professor Agarwal. Have a nice day and come back to the MC, please. Thank you.
I don't think that Mbak Yolanda is here, but Pak Leo, can you inform the audience again the next session?
Yeah. Yes, Pak Irwan. Thank you, Pak Anom. We're gonna have our parallel session start at 12:30. Okay, and the link is already on the conference guide. You already have it. Yeah. So we'll see you on 12:30 then in the parallel sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice day, Pak Leo, Prof. Irwan.
Yeah, you too.
Pak Edi.